Or listen to the podcast. Just search for Hancock and Kelley.
President Biden has apparently moved on to a new top campaign issue, abortion. The strategy has put the vice president front and center, who says on this issue, women should be calling the shots.
The government should not be telling her what to do with her body. This is, in fact, a healthcare crisis.
She and the president have apparently shifted their strategy of running on Bidenomics and Donald Trump's legal troubles. Abortion rights have been a dominant and successful election issue for Democrats since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022, something Donald Trump is taking credit for. Is this issue alone enough to beat him in November, Michael?
No, I mean, he's going to win. And it's because of antiquated policies and taking credit for taking away health care from women. 54% of the people who show up in November to vote for President of the United States will be females. The Republicans are way out of touch on abortion, top to bottom. Even if you believe there should be restrictions on abortions, we live in a state where you can't even have an exception for incest or rape. That dog's not going to sell. And for that reason, I think this is a smart policy for the Biden administration to continue to remind voters that the Republicans are way out of touch.
Are they right to be putting their eggs into that basket?
Well, Republicans are losing on the messaging on this. And I hear from conservative women all the time that have traditionally voted Republican and who are going to vote Democrat because of how this is rolling out. I think it's important to note that the two remaining candidates for president on the Republican side both have a more nuanced view. Trump has said things and Nikki Haley have both said things that have a more nuanced view than what we have here in Missouri. And all of the federal delegation in Missouri believes that there should be exceptions for rape and incest. So the policy that we have in Missouri is very restrictive and more restrictive than most voters here. If we don't do a better job as Republicans on messaging this and figuring out where most people are, which is not full-term abortion, which is where a lot of Democrats are, and it's not complete bans, it's somewhere in the middle. If we don't figure that out, we're going to lose and continue to lose.
Former President Trump beat Nikki Haley by 11 points in the New Hampshire primary, but then became incensed by her refusal to drop out of the race after just 2 small election contests.
This race is far from over. There are dozens of states left to go. And the next one is my sweet state of South Carolina.
She was up and I said, wow, she's doing like a speech like she won. She didn't win, she lost.
Mr. Trump then announced that any donors who continued to donate to Haley's campaign, and he called her bird brain, will be forever barred from his MAGA movement. Haley says her campaign raised $1.6 million the first day after Trump's announcement. It's more than $4 million now. Also, Friday, a New York jury handed down an $83.3 million judgment against Donald Trump for defaming former magazine columnist E. Jean Carroll. Mr. Trump had had already been found legally liable for sexually assaulting her. That verdict came last year, but the incident happened back in the 90s in a New York department store dressing room. Michael, how much more does the possibility rise that Donald Trump, don't all of these things start to mount and maybe he's not going to be the guy, the Republican nominee in November? Does it ever add up?
Well, you sure would hope so, right? And then, Donald Trump continues to show that he's a sexist and a racist with his attacks constantly. You'll remember he was attacking Barack Obama, saying he wasn't America. Then he was going after Kamala Harris. Now he's going after Nikki Haley, somebody inside of his own party. So he continues to alienate women and more moderate voters. You couple that with these continued judgments and a president who just can't control himself. He's like a toddler when it comes to running his mouth, and therefore he puts himself in these predicaments that continues to put a spotlight on the chaos and turmoil that is Donald Trump. He's going to continue to lose in court, and he's going to lose at the ballot box.
I put my thumb in the air Friday when the verdict announcement came down, and it just seemed to me like things are changing. People I talk to seem to be having it up to here with Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think the Democrats want to run against Trump. I think he's the only person that Biden could potentially beat. And Nikki Haley in the polling shows that she can beat him, and she doesn't have the baggage. So I think it would be good for Democrats if Trump is the nominee. He may still win. I don't think we're going to know until November. As far as him being sexist, I think he's like this towards everybody. And the threats about going against the donors, I mean, a lot of politicians do that. They don't usually talk about it publicly. They do it behind the scenes. And I think one of the things people like about him is he just says what he's thinking. It also hurts him. In this case, it cost him, what, $83 million? It's a lot of money.
Still to come on Hancock and Kelley, our quote of the week is on yet another attempt to legalize sports betting in Missouri, and former Governor Jay Nixon now playing a key role in having someone other than Joe Biden or Donald Trump become our next president.